Good morning, AP. Today is Monday, April 13th, and it is multiple choice Monday, so class is going to run a little bit more, a little differently today. Today you're going to need to be on page 12 of your distance learning packet, so make sure you're on page 12. But before we get there, just a review of some things that we've been doing. On April 1st, we looked at student work and graded it based on the AP rubric. On the 3rd, we revised student work. On the 7th, we looked at prose analysis. On the 9th, and then last class, we focused on extending body paragraphs. Over the weekend, I updated, so I graded for 2 hours, and I updated almost anything that was sent to me. I got about halfway through my inbox of stuff that was sent to me, so I'm slowly pacing through it. You will know that I've graded some of your work because you will receive an email that says, hey, so-and-so, I graded this work. It's been entered in the grade book, and look at the notes attached if you have any questions. So keep an eye on that. It's a work in progress. And without further ado, a couple announcements. So here we go. Today we are going to be looking at multiple choice because it's multiple choice Monday. But before we get there, our revised AP dates. So AP has been trying to, it's not AP, College Board has been trying to adapt to this coronavirus environment that we're living in right now. So what they've done is they had to modify their test so you guys can take it online. And it's been changed from the 8th, Wednesday, May 8th, at 8 a.m. to Wednesday, May 13th at 2 p.m. and it's going to be taken online. Instead of a 155-minute test, no, 155-minute multiple choice section and 3 essays in 2 hours, it is one 45-minute essay, which is the prose analysis. So it's good that we've been focusing on that. This is coming straight out of the email that I received. Students will be able to take exams on any devices they have access to, computer, tablet, or smartphone. They'll be able to type and upload their responses or write responses by hand and submit a photo via their cell phones. And for most subjects, the exams will be 45 minutes long, plus an additional 5 minutes for uploading. Students will need to access the online testing system 30 minutes early to get set up. That's what I know right now. You're going to be accessing that, I assume, through your AP accounts. But when I get more information, you'll get more information. So without further ado, please turn to page 12 of your distance learning packet. Page 12, there is a poem called I Felt a Funeral in My Brain by Emily Dickinson. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to hit pause on this video. Pause. Time yourself. There are 10 questions, excuse me. There's 10 questions. Pause, time yourself for 12 minutes and do this multiple choice. See how many you can get through and see how many you can get right. So you take a second, pause this video, and then come back and we'll review the answers. Thank you. Okay, so now that you've finished reading the poem, I Felt a Funeral in My Brain by Emily Dickinson and answering the 10 questions on pages 12 and 13, we're going to go over the answers. So the answer to number 1 is A. The poem is best described as an analytical narrative, and that's because it is told in the first person, so it's a story a person is telling. Now I understand why you might want to pick dramatic monologue, but it's telling the story of something that's happening to the narrator. So because it's a story, it's a narrative. Also, a monologue is read more of a speech, and this poem isn't really a monologue. Number 2 is D, irregular meter. So there are parallel clauses in here. That's letter A. That will be line 3, kept treading till it seemed. And line 7, kept beating till I thought. Those lines are parallel. The metaphor, for example, you see in line 13, as all the heavens were a bell. Comparing heavens to a bell without the word like or as is a metaphor. Irregular use of punctuation, that's like the frequency of the hyphens that you see within here. And the symbolism, goes back to the line 1 where it's like, I felt a funeral in my brain. It's that representation. The whole poem is an extended metaphor about this funeral going on in the narrator's brain. So what we see is this poem does have regular meter. So I felt a funeral in my brain. So what I want you to do is look at the first lines of each stanza and count the syllables in them, and that's going to help you establish the meter. And as you can tell, they all have 8 syllables, so even though the poem doesn't necessarily rhyme, it has a natural rhythm to it. So it does not have an irregular meter, it has a regular meter, so D is the correct answer for number 2. Number 3 is E. So what we need to know in order to understand that the answer to number 3 is E, you need to realize that this is an extended metaphor. By saying I felt a funeral in my brain, the woman isn't physically dying, or the narrator. The narrator isn't physically dying, the speaker isn't physically dying, but her brain feels like it's dying. So from that, you can make the connection that she's having a mental breakdown here. Number 4, flip over to page 13. All of the following types of imagery are used in this poem except. So religious imagery is used in line 13 when they ascribe to heaven. Auditory is used in line 15 when they use the word silence. Tactile is used in line 8 when they use the word numb. Nautical means like boats, ships, sailors, being out on the sea. And they use the word plank in line 17 to like walk the plank. I know that one's a bit of a stretch. I would argue that one a bit. But there's absolutely no olfactory imagery in here. And as a reminder, olfactory imagery refers to smell. So that would be for number 4. Number 5, the answer is C. So if you look at the simile in line 5, it says a service like a drum. And then it extends into line, if you look at line 6, it says a service like a drum. Extending into line 7, kept beating till I thought. So what this does here is, because it's a drum, and because it uses the word drum with the word beating, it's actually reinforcing this idea that the speaker's thoughts are oppressive and repetitive to her. So that's why the answer is C. Number 6, this is kind of tricky. So because she mentions that her thoughts are like a drum, and because there is a regular meter within the poem, you can connect that to the idea of the meter being percussive and uniform. It's like a drum. It follows a regular beat, so it's percussive and uniform. Number 7, when examined collectively, many of the capitalized words in the poem share connotations with, the answer is B, death, funeral, mourners, service, box, soul, boots of lead, heavens, bell, silence. The majority of those capitalized words all have a connotation associated with death. So your answer is B. Number 8, sorry, typing mistake there. Your answer is D. The progression of each of the poem stanzas mirrors the speaker's descent into madness, and that really comes together as you see towards the end. She's like, as the metaphor goes, the extended metaphor is comparing a funeral to her mental state. And as the poem progresses, the funeral ends with the casket being laid in the ground. And since the casket is her mind, it's the casket literally descending into the darkness. So it's an extended metaphor comparing that descent into darkness with, or into madness with a funeral. And it's literally laid out as that extended metaphor. So your answer is D. Number 9. What is the function of the final 2 lines? A, they represent the speaker's entrance into the unconscious. Really easy to figure out because she's telling her story, and then it just stops. And hit a world. That impact means something is going to change at every plunge, falling, and finish knowing then. And that cutoff tells you that there is an immediate tone shift and something has changed for our speaker. And because we know that her brain is descending into madness, that's when it happens. And finally, question 10. The tone of the poem might best be described as detached and dispassionate. And that's because this, even though the story is, the narrator is telling a narrative experience for her, she's not very emotional about it. Like, she's just saying this is what's happening very matter-of-factly. So it's detached. So do yourself a favor, back up this video if you need to. Make sure you understand why certain answers are correct. Next steps, I'm sorry. So on your own. Show up to class. We're doing in-class multiple choice Monday poetry, which is on page 14. And for homework, you need to read chapters 15, 16, and 17 of Their Eyes Were Watching God and compose 3 dialectical journal entries. Please reach out if you have any questions, and I will keep you posted on updates related to the AP test. And have a good week. Oh, there's no class on Thursday this week. I don't know why, but there's no class on Thursday. Please keep turning in your work regularly, and I will get it back to you as soon as I can.